Your life is not in your hands. Your life is in the hands of God.
Ayok Cup just resubbed for 20 months.
Yo, yo, yo. What is this AOC Cup doing? What is he doing, y'all? What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you, good sir. How are you? Good to see you. Yes, welcome. Okay, guys, I'm making some tea, green tea here. Let's see. Try to get this front and center. I'm zoomed in too much, but it is what it is. We'll make do. I'm awesome. Hope you are as well. Yes, doing very good. Very, very good. It's good to see you guys. Welcome to the stream. Let's see. I think I've got, music audio looks good. So I've been getting this question in my Q&A. And the question is about, what is this random ancient nation in Jeremiah who invades from the north? And I have to keep telling the person who asks it, I don't know. Well, I promised them that this week I would figure out. So I figured I better dedicate the stream to the topic so I can actually learn what it is I'm talking about here. So that's what we're focused on today. I want to do research on this topic. And if we figure out soon enough, I don't know how long it'll take, but if we figure out soon enough, then we can jump into maybe some sermon prep or something. AOC Cup, much love to you. Thank you so much for all the support. Man, faithfully coming in, resub after resub. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Thank you so much. Guys, we got to get some tea going. I got some green tea. We're going to jump on this. Now, we cannot let this steep very long. It is a very, very sensitive green tea. What's up, Lion Exchange? Good to see you. My Journey, hello, good evening to you. Welcome. Just making some tea here real quick.
Your life is not in your hands. Your life is in the hands of God.
Look at all that lemon support.
Violent Midget 300 just resubbed for 13 months.
13! Thank you so much, Violent. Got the green tea going today. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you guys are well. So as indicated, a regular attendee of my congregation keeps asking me about the ancient nation that invades from the north in the book of Jeremiah. And I asked them which chapter it was in, and they said before chapter 30. So we have to examine some ancient northern nation from Jeremiah 1 to 30 to figure out what the answer is. My Journey says, having mint tea with you. Yes, much love. Love to see it. Thank you so much for the lurk, Psalm 22. Much love to you, Violent. Yes, thank you so much, My Journey. Cheers. Hope you enjoy. I got a nice green tea here. And let's go ahead and jump in and try to get a little research going. Ooh, I almost let it go too long there. It's still good. So, I'm just going to create a notes document and call it Ancient Northern Nation in Jeremiah. Okay. And we need to dig into this topic because I don't know nothing about it and I'm tired of getting asked. So, let's go to Jeremiah. I think that's our first stop. And I want to do like Old Testament surveys or introductions. Jeremiah, often called the weeping prophet because of his sorrow over persistent message of God's judgment, prophesied to the nation of Judah from the reign of King Josiah, 627 BC, until sometime after the destruction of Jerusalem in 586. He dictated his prophecies to a scribe named Baruch. Jeremiah's task as a prophet was to declare the coming judgment of God. However, throughout the book, we also see concern for repentance and righteousness in individuals as well as nations. The dual focus is seen in God's instructions to Jeremiah. He was to pluck up and to break down, but also to build and to plant. Jeremiah sees a future day when God will write his law on the human hearts. They shall all know me. So it's not there, but we're not at a loss. We want to do like an ancient context commentary or something like that. So let's try maybe a background commentary or a context commentary. All right. Not the start we were looking for, but our search was relatively narrow. Okay. So we'll dial it in here. We will dial it in. Alrighty. Let's, instead of context, Jeremiah, let's go background. Here we go. Zondervan Illustrated Bible Backgrounds Commentary. Jeremiah. Literary setting. Historical setting. The final days of Judah constitute the historical setting that sets the stage for Jeremiah's prophetic ministry. Jeremiah was born into a world of violent changes and intense power struggles. Two significant events frame the stage on which Jeremiah will act as God's mouthpiece. The first one is the process by which the center of ancient Near Eastern power shifts from Assyria to Babylonia. This shift allows Judah a certain degree of freedom, albeit short-lived, to carry out important religious and political reforms. The second event, the fall of Jerusalem, produces a profound and irreversible scar in the life of and identity of ancient Israel. The political, economic, social, and religious realities of the period in between these two hallmark events are the ones that surround the core of Jeremiah's prophetic activity. Cal Magic, hello everybody from the cold, relative to our summer's desert of Southern Cal. Nice. Is it getting chilly over there? We're pretty cold here. We've hit some negative digits last few days. Lion says not to short circuit the research, but isn't the Babylonians? Look, there's no short circuiting here, Lion. I need the answer. And if Lion has got the answer, that's the answer. Cal Magic says freezing for me 55. Nice. Let's look. Babylonians. I saw the Assyrians mentioned. Power shifts from Assyria to Babylonia. Like I told you, I would not do this research on my own, but imagine you're in a Q&A, okay? And you guys know I do Q&As after my services, and they're done completely blind, right? I don't know what I'm getting into. And 2 or 3 weeks in a row now, I've had somebody in my Q&A say, I'm reading through Jeremiah, and there's an ancient northern kingdom that is prophesied to come and conquer. Who are they? I mean, that's like a Bible factoid, right? Like, I just don't know it. I don't know it off the top of my head. So I promised this member of my congregation, they're not a member, but they're an regular attendee. I promised this individual who regularly attends my congregation, I promised them I would do some research and figure out who this ancient nation is. And I know hardly anything about Jeremiah. I haven't taken Jeremiah yet in my classes. I'll be taking them very soon. But more than that, I have always struggled to keep straight what's going on in the prophets. Once I get past about Solomon, I start getting lost. So it's just not my strong suit in terms of biblical studies. So I need to work on it. But Lion, you're not short-circuiting anything. If you're right, then boom, we just go with that. And I got plenty other things that I can work on. Psalm 22. Tell that congregant it's 15,000 points to research a topic. Yes, that's a true Pastor Tanner follower right there. I love it. Good to see you, Psalm 22. Appreciate you. Appreciate the lurk. Appreciate you coming out of the lurk to say that. That's good stuff. And you could very well be right, Lion Exchange, because it says right here, power shift from Assyria to Babylonia. The demise of the Assyrian Empire was a defining moment for the life of Judah at the end of the 7th century BC. It created a kind of power vacuum that enabled Judah to assert a degree of independence. In addition, Manasseh's extra-long reign in Judah, longer than any other king of the Davidic line, including David himself, finally came to an end in 642. He had been a vassal of the Assyrian Empire and is evaluated negatively by the prophets and historians of the Bible for his influence in favor of pagan religious practices. Okay, yes, but it's a good thing to understand the different conquests during the Old Testament. Yeah, I feel you, Lion. Cal Magic, John Walton's ancient new or near Eastern thought on the Old Testament. Great text of thinking about the alternative gods and practices of the ancient Near East. Yes. There's so much good material. I wish I had just time to study constantly, because you could dig into the ancient Near Eastern context forever. There's a pretty famous professor, Meredith Kline, in my rough denominational circles that is well known for his understanding of ancient Near Eastern context. He made most of his career on that. Suzerainty treaties are a big area of study and research for Meredith Kline. Manasseh was succeeded by his son Amon, who ruled only 2 years. It was King Josiah who was able to take advantage of this international state of affairs. Assyria was on the decline, and Babylon had not yet asserted its power in the region. Thus, Josiah was able to recover political power for Judah as well as institute important religious reforms. For almost 3 decades, Judah enjoyed a time of progress and hope. During this time, however, Babylonia started filling the vacuum left by Assyria. In 626-625, Nabopolassar defeated the Assyrian army, and he founded a new dynasty in Babylon that has become known as the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The new empire lasted until 539 BC, when Babylon surrendered to the power of the Persians. During the reign of Nabopolassar, the situation in Judah remained relatively stable. Josiah leads a religious reform movement, no doubt prompted by the finding of the Book of the Law in the abandoned corner of the temple, or perhaps the scroll was part of the foundation deposit that was typically searched out during the temple restoration process. This is the approximate time when we can suppose that Jeremiah begins his preaching. Beginning in 612, matters begin to change rapidly in the overall international situation. These in turn have direct effect on Judah's situation. So maybe it's after Babylon. If he's preaching in this region, interesting. Nineveh, the capital city of Assyria, is defeated by the coalition of Babylonians and Medes in 612. Oh no, you're probably right, Lion Exchange. For Assyria, this means the beginning of a rapid decline towards oblivion. Only 2 years later, the Babylonians inflict another deadly blow on the Assyrians by taking control of Haran. At this point, something critical takes place with respect to Judah. When Egypt sees Babylon's advance in power, it makes an attempt to help the Assyrians recover Haran. The military campaign fails miserably. The Assyrian-Egyptian coalition is defeated, and Haran remains firmly in Babylonian hands. At this time, Judah commits an unfortunate and tactical error. The Egyptian army, led by Pharaoh Necho II, marches through Israel en route to Mesopotamia. King Josiah and his army try to intercept it at Megiddo. Josiah, the one king who has embodied hope for Judah, is killed by Pharaoh Necho II, and with his death, Judah's dreams and hopes dissipate into thin air. This turn of events in 609 BC no doubt affects Jeremiah and his ministry as well. The brief time of independence, growth, and spiritual reform has quickly come to an end. Okay, this is helpful. Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian empires. So this is the whole region they're fighting over. Okay. Pharaoh Necho II takes advantage of his victory over Judah. He immediately removes Jehoahaz, Josiah's successor, who has ruled for only 3 months, and he installs Eliakim, whose name is changed to Jehoiakim. This king serves as a puppet king under the power of the Egyptian pharaoh. This situation, as it turns out, will not last long. Once again, the Egyptians make an attempt to curb Babylon's increasing power in the ancient Near East. And once again, Egypt fails. Oof. Benjamin, what is up? Hey, I'm glad to see you. Yeah, good to see you. You joined the Discord. Very nice. I will say that Discord has been out there for a long time. Okay, so some of the threads or forums on there just not as active. So beware of that. But glad you joined, and then you should be able to DM me on there if you want to at any time. Is this for a class? No, this is for a member of my congregation. They've been doing their yearly Bible reading through Jeremiah, and they had some questions. And so I decided I'd do some research so I can get them some answers. Cal Magic says, I'm retired and there's still not enough time to study as much as I would like. Very frustrating. I understand. I feel that. So yeah, just trying to do a little background research for a member of my congregation. Now, let's go through. One word they kept using was ancient. So let's see if we can find ancient in here. Jeremiah 5. Behold, I am bringing against you a nation from afar, O house of Israel, declares the Lord. It is an enduring nation, an ancient nation, a nation whose language you do not know, nor can you understand what they say. This is what they want to know. They want to know who this is. Ancient nation, ancient roads, ancient times, ancient heights. Yeah, so this is what they want to know. This. Jeremiah 5:15. Who are we talking about? That's what they want to know. Well, this shouldn't be that hard to figure out anymore. We understand the overall big picture here. We could go into a little bit more depth, but don't need to. We can tell there's Assyrian-Babylonian struggles going on. Let's go ahead and try to research Jeremiah 5:15 and see who this nation is. So, I'll do a passage guide. Jeremiah 5:15. Commentaries. And we could also do single volume and do any of these background commentaries. Again, just looking for any of the background commentaries we have. Let's see. I don't see any hits for my background commentaries. Here's one. Foreign language. The Assyrian tax collectors, some of whom may have come from various parts of the empire, spoke Aramaic, while the majority of Israelites spoke only Hebrew. They may also have had strange-sounding accents, which added to the sense of foreign control and oppression for the people of Judah. See Jeremiah 5:15 for the same reaction under Babylonian rule. There's a point for Lion Exchange. Benjamin Allen, do you have any advice for someone, namely myself, asking for a friend? Benjamin, you did that backwards. You're supposed to say asking for a friend. Who struggles with the means by which God brings us through, all ultimately with the same desired outcome. Struggles with the means by which God brings us through, all ultimately with the same desired outcome. I'm going to give a broad answer, and then I want you to ask a little more in depth if this doesn't cover your question. My broad answer is we all have the same desired outcome, yes, but we are all different. We're created differently. Different strengths, different weaknesses. And so because we are different, different means are needed, if that makes sense. So yes, there's the same end, if you will, desired outcome. But because we're different, God adapts our situation and circumstances to our personalities so that we will repent and believe, if that makes sense. So that's a broad understanding. If you want more details about that, let me know. Lion Exchange, your congregate's inquiry is valid. Like, where in the Bible does it say it's the Babylonians? It doesn't. You're correct. And that's their question. Okay, so we got another hint from here. Now let's dig into some of the more in-depth commentaries on Jeremiah itself. Oh, I have a Jeremiah context commentary. Woo! Lexham context commentary, let's go. This should maybe give us the background. What's up, Terrell? Good to see you. Benjamin says, I want a specific program at seminary, but it seems I may have to go through a certificate program first because of low GPA. Yeah, so there could be a variety of things here. I found that oftentimes when you're stuck in a situation like this and it doesn't make sense, to try and just be creative and use your imagination as to what could God be doing here, okay? So you have low GPA and you want to go into a specific program in seminary, but because of low GPA, you may have to go through a certificate program first. So there could be many things that God is doing here. And oftentimes he does multiple things at once with situations like this. He might be trying to point you in a different direction than this specific program. Maybe the same seminary, but a different program. Or he could be pointing you in the direction of a different seminary altogether. Sometimes God puts roadblocks in our place so that we will seek alternative ends. He also might be trying to discourage you from going into seminary entirely and point you into a completely different direction, like a trade or something like that. Okay. So those are just, sometimes God throws roadblocks in order to, point us in alternative directions. But that's not always the reason. Okay. Sometimes he also throws a roadblock so we can learn perseverance through the roadblock. Okay. And so I could imagine 5-10 years from now, let's say you go through it. Okay. You go through the certificate program. It's a real struggle. It adds extra time to your seminary degree and it's frustrating for some time. But then 5 to 10 years from now, you're ministering to somebody and they're struggling with almost the exact same thing. Boom. Now you're perfectly equipped to help them through their situation because you have gone through that situation yourself. You see what I mean? So God will sometimes throw a situation in our way so that we can be a better minister to others. I've met many people who have struggled with anxiety and depression, and then they say it's been such a blessing because through their personal struggles of anxiety and depression, at the time they were feeling like, what is the point of this? Why? Later on down the road, they were able to help a fellow brother or sister who was also struggling with anxiety and depression because they've walked through the same path. Okay, so that's a potential thing as well. God also might be trying to point your direction to your low GPA. Okay, sometimes we suffer the natural consequences of our actions, and so he might want you to reflect on why your GPA is low. Okay, that you wouldn't have to go through this certificate program if your GPA was higher. So you may need to reflect on that. Maybe you were lazy. Okay, that can absolutely be the case, but maybe you weren't lazy. Maybe you worked really, really hard, and yet you still ended up with the low GPA. That might be telling you, hey, I shouldn't go down this path, because if I have to do a certificate program first and I have low GPA, even though I tried my absolute hardest, maybe this isn't the path for me. Maybe this isn't how God has equipped me. Again, if you were lazy, then maybe God's trying to get your attention to say, you need to step up your game if you're actually going to go in this direction. I'll give one example. I was pretty lazy in high school. And I got into college, and then not only college, but then I started to take my MDiv program, and my bad study habits caught up to me. And I wasn't able to keep up with many of my degree classes, and I started having to purchase extensions to my classes because I was just not being diligent in my studies. And God really got my attention with that. And I had to change my mode if I was going to continue down that path. I have much better study habits now, and that's helped me a ton in many areas of my life. Sermon preparation, continuing schoolwork, even the YouTube channel. So that's something that I've learned as well. Cal Magic says, some of the doors that God places say push. That's exactly right. And this is where it's so hard because discernment is so needed. Okay. Sometimes a door says stop trying, and sometimes a door says push a little harder. And it takes discernment and trial and error and knowing the Spirit of the Lord to figure out the direction he wants us to go. Okay. So that's another one. Benjamin says, it wouldn't add more time or anything, nor will I have to take any courses. My bachelor was over 10 years ago, so really just facing the consequences. I see. And so let's see. I've given a few examples of what it might be. It also, at times, it could not even be related to like any push or pull in this area. Sometimes God puts a trial in our way so that we will learn to persevere through trials while we're juggling multiple things. So I've seen this before. Somebody's going through something in their life and it just seems like God keeps ramping up the pressure. And it's like, why? Why did everything hit me at once? Sometimes God does that on purpose because he wants you to see what you're made of, see what you're capable of, see what you can do. Benjamin, with what you just said as well, it might also be that you just need a refresher, and the certificate program is going to be able to refresh you and get you going. So you see what I mean? Like, and here's the bottom line with what I'm trying to get at here. There is so much complexity. That was just off the top of my head on what it possibly could be. Well, there are many other things that I didn't mention that it could be as well. And so here's the broad overarching principle. We are often far too limited as creatures to be able to know all of God's plans, purposes, will, etc. And so the bottom line is the true heart of faith says whatever God ordains is right, and I'm going to keep persevering and pressing forward through what he has ordained and put in my path unless he clearly throws a roadblock in front of my way that's insurmountable. And I'm going to keep pressing forward in faith, recognizing that this is for my good, and is able to leave it at that and says, okay, I don't understand, Lord. Doesn't make sense to me. Somebody else seems to be able to skate through the same situation that you've placed so many trials and difficulties in my path. I don't know, but whatever God ordains is right. And I'm just going to try to continue to be faithful to the path that I feel like he's given to me. And that's kind of what the heart of faith says. You know, I'm not saying it's easy, but that's kind of ultimately the direction you want to be able to go, where they're just recognizing your finitude as a human being. You're not going to be able to figure out all the details. Like I said, I came up with 4 or 5 possibilities just off the top of my head. And there are 4,000 or 5,000 real possibilities if you're much smarter than I am. You see what I mean? And it's beyond our calculus to figure out. So we just press forward in faith, hoping in God that he's got something for us, and we will learn the lesson we're meant to learn, right? Benjamin, ironically, I just went through James, which has a lot to do with trials for my church podcast. I plan to transfer after 2 semesters in certificate program into the desired program. Okay, it sounds like a decent plan. And yeah, it's one of those things that if you truly believe God has put you on this path and this is the direction he wants you to go, then embrace the trials, recognizing that his ways are greater than your ways, his thoughts are greater than your thoughts, and try to be as diligent and effective as you can with the path he has in front of you. That would be my recommendation. Really good question. This stuff is so hard. There's a little book by Kevin DeYoung called Just Do Something. And it's regarding the idea that people are struggling to understand God's will for their lives. And he essentially says, just do something. You're never going to be able to figure out all the details to the situation. And so just make the best effort you can and trust God with the rest of it. Edgemark, what's up? Good to see you. Your favorite Tanner. Am I your only Tanner? Come on now. Well said, PT. Thank you, Lion. Appreciate that. Let's see. Twitch Theologian had to go to summer school to get my high school diploma. I almost didn't graduate. See, there you go. Twitch Theologian. And Twitch Theologian is an excellent theologian, if I might add. Very studious, well-read. And I've learned a lot from Twitch Theologian. So there you go. That could be, the situation as well. You never know. Benjamin, sorry to monopolizing some of the stream with this question. It's not a monopoly, man. This is why I stream. If I wanted to just study, I would just study. I wouldn't stream it. I appreciate you, Benjamin. I hope that was helpful. What's up, Shay? Good to see you. What's good, man? I'm doing well. Doing well. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. All right. Big ban right here. I forgot I don't have access, so I have to go around to try and ban people. Don't worry. I'll get you banned here in a second. Don't get your britches in a bunch. There we go. Now you're banned. Sorry, I was a little slower than usual. I got to get my chatty up to date. Oh, it's my man Burra. Guys, you see Burra's comment here. I got to tell you something. You guys don't know this, but Burra has gone around on 4 or 5 of my YouTube videos to tell me I'm in sin by calling myself pastor. And he finally caught me live. Good to see you, Burra. Good to see you. Burra says, Pastor Tanner, why do you sin by being called pastor? And he quotes a Bible verse, do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, and we are all brothers. Do not be called leaders. Burra, you got me. He got me, guys. I put my name as Pastor Tanner on YouTube, and Burra has told me many, many times that I need to stop sinning by calling myself pastor. Love you, brother. Much love. Much love. And so he finally caught me live, though, guys. I've read his comment about 4 times on my other videos, and he's chased me down. What do you guys think? Am I in sin by calling myself Pastor Tanner? What do you guys think about that one? I'd be curious your guys' feedback on this one. Shay, wait, you don't want the free channel promotions? Is that what it was, Shay? I didn't see that that's what it was. Oh, man. Why did I ban them? Twitch Theologian, oh no, how will he ever make it as a streamer now? That's exactly right. Not possible. Not possible. What do you guys think? Is Burra right? Am I in sin by calling myself pastor? You guys got to tell me. You guys got to tell me. All right, we're going to dig into the Babylonians here. Twitch Theologian, as I am one who is revered, I declare you are a pastor. Ooh. Burra, what if somebody else calls me pastor? Is that a sin? Is it a sin if somebody else calls me pastor? What if I didn't want to be called pastor, but somebody else called me that? Did I sin or did they sin? Lion Exchange says no. All right, Lion Exchange does not think it's sin to be called pastor. I don't know. I'm going to be honest, Burra. I haven't heard this one very much. Okay, so I confess it's caught me off guard. I don't know how to respond to it. You know what I'm saying? It's a struggle. Let's go. Where is this verse? Where is this verse? Is this in Matthew? I'm sure we can find it. Let's find this verse and do a little exegesis, see what we can't figure out. All right. And I might have to look up multiple Bible versions. Let's go Top Bibles, Rabbi. Right here. It's Matthew 23, 8 to 10. Okay, Matthew 23, 8 to 10. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Neither be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ. Burra says, I love what you bring to Logos and YouTube, brother. Burra, what do you talk about, man? The only comment you have ever left me is that I'm a big sinner for being called pastor. And now you're like, I'm your biggest fan. Burra, you're sending me mixed signals, bro. Bro. No, I appreciate you. Look, that's what Master said. Getting mixed messages here. Come on, man. Look, I appreciate it. Let's do a little study on this, okay? Let's do a little study on this. I think we've got time to do a little bit of research on Matthew 23, 8 to 10, okay? My only issue is your title. All right, I appreciate you. Okay, guys, look, now we understand, okay? Here's what's going on. Burra says, look, I appreciate you so much, brother, that I want to reach out to you this many times to help you, right? Your title, your content is fantastic. I love your content, but man, your title, you got to fix that. All right, I appreciate you, Burra. It's making sense to me now. Let's do a little exegesis. To see what we got, because this is a serious charge, right? If I'm in violation, if I'm in sin from this, I want to repent. I'll tell you what, right now, I do. So let's figure out what's going on here. I think a little passage guide would be helpful. So let's open another passage guide and we'll do a little study on Matthew 23, 8 to 10. Matthew 23, 8 to 10, okay? Matthew 23, 8 to 10. What is up, Dustbuster? Man, it's been a minute. How are you, my man? How are you? Good to see you. Welcome. I hope you're well. All right. Okay, Cal Magic says it's not a sin to be called a pastor. Romans 12, 6. Okay, so let's go to Romans 12, 6. Having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. If prophecy, in proportion to our faith. If service, in our serving. The one who teaches, in his teaching. The one who exhorts. The one who contributes. The one who leads. The one who does acts of mercy. So what do you think here, Burra? You've got the one who leads. in Romans 12:8 and the one who teaches in Romans 12:7. Are those, would you say that those, because a title's not being used? I don't know. It's called ha didaskon. Ha didaskon. That's a noun, right? No, it is a verb. Yeah, it is a verb. So it's not used as a title. It is literally the one who teaches. Okay. It's two verbs, right? No, here's the noun. Didaskalia, but it's referring to the teaching itself, not the teacher. Okay? Not the teacher. What's up, John? John White, yes! Good to see you. Okay. Burra says the office / title. We use titles to draw attention to ourselves, which is the context of what Jesus is getting at. All right, I feel you. So I agree this verse, it's not slam dunk. It's not slam dunk. I appreciate it though, Cal Magic. Cal Magic says preaching is used in other translations. I got you. But I can see because the noun form is referring to the teaching itself and the verbal form is referring to the one who teaches. So I don't see the noun in terms of title, teacher, here. So let's go ahead and check out what John White's got for us. This is Ephesians 4:11. Good little study, guys. Good little study. All right. Ephesians 4:11. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and the teachers. Ooh. Okay. Here's the noun. This one's teacher. What say you here, Burra? Here it is, Ephesians 4:11, and it explicitly teacher here, didaskalus. Okay, let's just hit this up in the Bible word study. Come on, Bible word study, right here, didaskalos, teacher. Okay, so here would be my way to reconcile these. This is an important idea, guys, regardless of where you fall down on this. What's up, Jockmer? Samuel Souls, good to see you guys. Dustbuster, I'm confused. What's the sin? Using the title? Yes. Me titling myself as pastor. Pastor, okay? Shay, also need to deal with 1 Timothy 3 when Paul is addressing people as overseer, elder, pastor. Okay, so here's a broad principle, guys, wherever you land on this, okay? We all have to do justice to all of the verses, all right? And I want to give an example here. Okay? Romans chapter 13 says to be obedient to governments and rulers and those who are in authority. Okay? So let's go Romans 13. Listen, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. All right? Now, if we go to the book of Acts, here in Acts chapter 5, Peter and John get thrown into prison for preaching in the name of Christ. And they're being charged by the government to quit preaching in the name of Christ. And Acts 5:29 says, but Peter and the apostles answered, we must obey God rather than men. The reason I'm bringing this up, I actually got into a conversation with a fellow brother in our church regarding this very issue. I preached in a sermon, Romans 13:1, and I said, we need to be obedient to governments and those who are in authority. And then the individual came up to me afterwards and said, Pastor Tanner, why did you say we need to be obedient to governments and those who are in authority when the Bible also says we must obey God rather than men? And it was seeming that there was a contradiction here, right? And here's what we all believe here. We all believe in the authority of all of God's word. Regardless of which side of the issue you fall on, you need to do justice to both Romans 13:1, be obedient to governments and those who are in authority, and Acts 5:29, we must obey God rather than men. And so the conclusion for this is, in general, we are obedient to governments or those who are in authority unless they forbid us to do something that God explicitly commands us to do. If we put that rule in place, that makes sense out of Romans 13:1, and it makes sense out of Acts 5:29. You see what I mean? So if you hold to both at once, you can find a principle that navigates doing justice to both passages. Okay. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is there is a statement here in Ephesians 4:11 that refers to certain people as being teachers. Okay. But Burra has brought up that there's a statement here in Matthew 23:10, which says we should not be called instructors. Okay. So why are we taking the title of instructor? And yet later in the Bible, Paul uses the title of teacher to describe certain people with certain giftings. So the question is, how can we do justice to both Matthew 23:8-10 and Ephesians 4:11, right? We want to do justice to both, okay? Also, Shay brings up Hebrews 13:7, so let's check that one out. So what are some solutions you guys recommend? What are some things that you would first think of trying to do justice to both Matthew 23 and to Hebrews and Ephesians? What are some solutions you could think of that we could simultaneously obey Jesus' injunction to not be called rabbi or father or instructor, and also to recognize that the New Testament does recognize these titles in some cases? Shay reads this: remember your leaders. Okay, remember your leaders. Now, I would say this is a verb, so those who lead you, I think, would be more proper here. Tone hegumenon, okay? And so translated leaders here, but it seems like not a slam dunk for me because it's a verbal form. So curious your guys' thoughts on that. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith, okay? All right, let's continue. Shay says that's partial context. I'm guessing Matthew. The Pharisees, though, were also claiming that Jesus was not the Messiah and that they were the source of truth. Okay, got you. So Jesus would, in that case, be utilizing these phrases to try and tell the Pharisees that they're going to undergo a greater judgment, right? And they better make sure they're leading properly and appropriately. Okay. Dustbuster. Paul refers to himself as an apostle. Is that sin? Okay, that's a good point. Twitch Theologian. Yes, the very Reverend Dr. Apostle Prophet Tanner is being charged with stolen clerical valor. Very good. And Twitch Theologian says this: we call ourselves saved, yet we're not fully saved yet. We may count a future truth as a present reality. Therefore, after you are ordained, nobody will feel any different after they sneeze in front of you. I see. Nice. Shay, that seems like a pastor to me in Hebrews, okay? No, Shay. Hebrews is not written by Paul. We do not tolerate blasphemy of that sort in this channel. Repent immediately, sir. Cal Magic, God is the ultimate authority, but our leaders are appointed, so we are to follow them unless they disobey God. Okay, good ideas across the board. Let's do a little bit of exegesis on Matthew 23, 8-10, okay? I think the passage guide is going to help us out here. And let's see what some of the exegetical commentaries say about this verse. All right? Let's pull this one up first. Let's see. This is John Noland, the New International Greek Testament Commentary. Under the rubric of do not do what is in accord with their deeds, Matthew introduces material in verses 8-12 in which the disciple community is now directly challenged about self-promotion and the use of titles. Okay, perfect. This is exactly what Burr is getting at. There are three parallel statements, each consisting of two clauses, one directive and the other providing support for the directive. Guys, I'm going to need more tea if we're going to do this study. Let's get this going. All right. While the general parallelism is close, there is a great deal of variation in the specific form. Christian leaders should not join the scramble to claim the newly popular title rabbi. To do so would be to obscure the unique teaching role of Jesus for the Christian community. I'm not going to lie, this commentary seems in line with what Burra is saying. One, on Jesus as a teacher in Matthew, see the discussion at 8:19. By elevating one over another, the title rabbi would also distort the family relationship as brothers and sisters, which is to characterize the Christian community. To refuse the title rabbi on the basis of being brothers and sisters is based on a radical Christian adaptation of the Jewish understanding of membership in the community of God's people. Seems straightforward thus far. Twitch theologian Paul said he was called from birth, yet it took time for his position to dovetail with reality. That's a very interesting idea, Twitch theologian. Verse 9. If Jesus is the unique teacher, then God is the unique Father to whom each owes the origin of his or her life in the Christian community. It is this which must not be obscured by the pedestaling of any human figure as Father. Matthew is probably challenging a newly emerging titular use. In rabbinic sources, various important figures in the 1st and 2nd century Judaism have the title Abba Father in front of their names. It is likely to be this practice rather than a wide range of other uses of Father to which the Matthean Jesus is objecting. Okay, so here's some pushback, Burra. What would you say to the argument that Jesus is attacking a specific Jewish form of taking titles to yourself, and that this is not what we're practicing today when we use the term pastor or reverend or something like that? What would you say to that? I'm just curious. I don't know. But that's one thing he's saying here, that perhaps Matthew or the Matthean Jesus is objecting to a specific practice that the Jewish leaders were utilizing at the time. Just curious your thoughts on that. Let's continue reading, guys. Good stuff here. Matthew does not have in mind addressing one's natural father as father. He is not criticizing respectful or affectionate uses of father as an honorific or categories for older people as is found in most cultures. Usages like the Jewish reference to Abraham as father, which seem to draw together ancestry and foundational significance for national identity and faith, come a little closer to Matthew's concerns, but they are unlikely to have provoked his opposition. The references to our father Eleazar in 4th Maccabees and our father Aaron in verse 11 share with the reference to Abraham the sense of historical significance, but without an ancestry component. I doubt whether this would have bothered Matthew. Where would Matthew have classified Elisha's uses? My father, of the departing Elijah. Ooh. Burra said, I would say it is applicable to then and now. I see. So you're saying it's not contextually or culturally relevant, but it's kind of for all time that Jesus would have us to hold to this. What do you think of his second argument here? The fact that Elisha uses the term father when he refers to Elijah. Is Elisha operating in a sinful way because he allows Elisha to call him father? As soon as the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down? He answered, you shall not strike them down. What do you think about that argument? This is a good study, guys. I'm enjoying this. Twitch theologian. By the way, I try to stop people in my church from calling me pastor. I tell them to just call me Samson. There's been an elevation of authority abuse in the church that I'm trying to rectify. I like that, Twitch theologian. I like that very much. Yeah. And I would say this, irrespective of where we land on the specific use of the title, okay, irrespective of where we land on the specific use of the title, I do think this is a problem in the church. I have actually had members of my congregation come up to me and say, I don't know why people exalt you and your role as pastor of the church. You're just like the rest of us. And I commended my brother and I pat him on the back. I said, that's right, brother. That's right. I'm no different. I just have a certain calling, if you will, from God. And so I seek to preach and teach, in accord with my calling. But I do want to let everybody know I have not, eager for promotion or self-aggrandizement or anything like that. I have not tried to, I don't know how to put it, magnify myself or gather for myself the title of pastor because I like this authoritative title. And I do think this is a problem. I think this is a problem in churches. I agree with what you said, Twitch theologian, an elevation of authority abuse. There are a lot of people who look to the pastor as somehow this extra spiritual figure that I think is incorrect. We're all brothers and sisters. Yes, we have different giftings and different callings, but that doesn't make the pastor any more holy or spiritual or righteous or worthy of accolades than anybody else. So I want you guys to know from a practical standpoint, that's how I feel. Now, the reason I called myself Pastor Tanner is because pastor is generally the word we utilize in the English language to recognize a person who engages in my profession, right? When you come to a channel titled Pastor Tanner, you expect to find some sort of religious Christian content, which is the content I'm creating. So I utilize the title simply as a marker to identify the fact that my content is about Christian theology, it's about doctrine, it's about Christian stuff, right? And that's why I call myself Pastor Tanner. But I can understand how a lot of people might want to grab that title for themselves because it seems to put them in sort of spiritual authority or something like that. Some sort of role where they think they're better than others. So, yeah, very interesting. Let's see some of the other ideas. Shay says, I never introduce myself as pastor. I just encourage people to call me Shay. I like that, Shay. And I say the same. When people call me pastor, it always makes me feel a little uncomfortable, to be honest. Master says, this is a good study. So much for the last guy in the mysterious nation. Guess he should have paid the 15,000 pulpit points. Let's go, Master. That's right. That's awesome. Edgemark says, whatever. You told me you wanted to become known as America's pastor. Oof. Shots fired, Edgemark. Shots fired. Twitch Theologian, we're supposed to be all professional Christians. It is a problem. Yes, I do agree with that. A lot of people don't take their faith seriously enough. Okay. Let's see. Edgemark, Shay, he thought he could get away with it. Everything in the dark will be brought to light. Cal Magic, there is a difference between pastor and attendees. A pastor is responsible for his flock and will be judged by God more stringently, is what I think from my reading of scripture. I agree with that as well, Cal Magic. And I take that very seriously. I take that very, very seriously. That's why we focus on church membership. So I know the souls for whom I will be accountable to God. Okay, I take that very, very seriously. Yeah, good ideas there, Cal Magic. Lion, ultimately, the purpose and function of pastor must be fulfilled and are more important than the title itself. Just like how dads are called dads, but children are still hurt if they do not carry their roles well. I like that. I think that's helpful. Shay, I will say as a youth pastor, so many parents encourage their students to come talk with the pastor because somehow I will pull them out of their sin. It ends up being students who I never see either. Yep, there you go. Then there's this kind of exaltation of the pastor role. You're going to figure it all out. Okay? Let's see what Burra says. Burra's got several comments here. Let's see. I consider you a humble servant of Christ. Well, thank you, Burra. I appreciate that. My concern is the average Christian who puts the burden of being the church on the pastor, not understanding they have the same responsibility of reaching the lost. And I do agree with that, Burra, and I teach that. I believe in the priesthood of all believers. Amen. Yes. That all Christians should take responsibility to be priest in our community. I do agree with that as well, Burra. Many people have areas of influence that I can't reach. So, yeah. I'm so glad you brought this up, Burra, and we could have a conversation about this. I think this has been really good. I'm not convinced yet that I need to just drop the title, okay? But I appreciate all of your concerns, and I think we agree more than we disagree, Burra. And it's also led to some great conversations with some others who are of a different persuasion. Really, really nice. Lion says, to Burra, the priesthood of all believers is not mutually exclusive from having the function and title of a pastor. And that's the direction I would lean at this point, Burra. Like I said earlier, we need to be able to do justice to all of the scriptures. And my case would be, not having done the full exegesis, I'll grant you that, but my case would be that there's going to be a way to follow Matthew 23, 8 to 10, but also recognize that sometimes the New Testament gives these titles to people. And so we can follow what Jesus said while also holding the title of pastor, but recognizing all of the concerns that you've raised. That would be my general gut level response at this point. But again, I would grant I haven't done all the in-depth exegesis of this passage. These are very, very strong words from Jesus that need to be taken seriously. Dustbuster says, the office of overseer. Rename your channel Overseer Tanner. There you go. Well, I partially think, Dust, that a more rigid reading of Matthew 23, 8 to 10 would rule out the title of overseer as well. But perhaps we're getting into a little better territory at that point. Not sure. Cal Magic, the priestly aspect of the Bible has been largely lost today. No doubt. Priesthood of all believers, absolutely the case. And we all need to be going out and ministering the gospel. All right, let's get some more tea. Just going to let that steep. Few seconds here. Can't let it go too long. Ooh, Shay says this. There seems to be agreement with you and Burra on the philosophical level, but differ on the application level. I like that, Shay, and I think that's correct. You can see the large themes that Burra is concerned about, I'm in agreement with, and I'm concerned about those very same things. But how that gets applied in our practical ministry, our practical theology, that's where we're differing a little bit. Burra wants to err on the side of let's not utilize these titles at all, whereas I want to err on the side of I think there's nuance here and we can utilize the titles as long as we're very careful to not fall into particular traps. But I could see why one would want to lean in one direction or the other. Very, very good study here, guys. And one thing I love, this doesn't happen often on the internet these days. We didn't attack each other. We didn't sling mud at each other. We didn't call each other names. Instead, we went to the Word, and we're trying to understand what the Word would have us to do, what the Word would have us to believe. And I think this is great. Look, Burra says, good discussion, family. Thank you. No, thank you, Burra. I think this is a great discussion. And this is how iron sharpens iron, guys. And I'll tell you what, I don't see this very often on the internet these days. So kudos to all of you. I commend each and every one of you for your spirit of love and humility as we discuss this challenging issue. Okay? I want to go through the rest of this exegetical commentary here and see what it has to say. And then we might call it on this topic because I feel like we can go deeper and deeper for sure. But I still want to make sure I understand where I'm going on this Jeremiah issue. Okay. All right. Got a little bit more tea. Twitch Theologian, what's interesting is that after my ordination, I've gone through the most difficult time in my life. Demonic attacks like I've never felt before. My family suffered as well. A very real struggle. I encourage everyone to not get ordained. Hey, amen, brother. I think it was Spurgeon who said, if you can do anything else, do that instead. Yeah. Not surprised. Hang in there. Shay says, I would echo this in my own life. Wow. Wow. Well, hang in there, gentlemen. Very difficult. Someone better be sure if they want to serve, it's not for the faint of heart for sure. Absolutely. All right, let's continue here, guys. Perhaps the active verb has been chosen for discussion of rabbi and personal tutor to suggest that responsibility for the situation lies primarily with a person seeking to be identified in these ways. But for father, a passive verb is used to suggest that responsibility in this cases falls on those addressing others. So this goes to my point earlier. If you're actively seeking the title, I want to be called pastor, that might be what's being spoken of against here. But if other people are calling you pastor, then maybe there's a little bit more leeway. You can see the difference between the active verb and the passive verb. That's interesting. Let's continue. Where appeal is made in Matthew 23:8 to the Christian development and radicalization of the Jewish recognition of the brotherhood of the Jewish people, there may be an implicit appeal here to the Jewish confession of the oneness of God, as for example, Deuteronomy 6:4 and Malachi 2:10. We cannot be sure of this because the parallel language of oneness is used in Matthew 23:8 for the one teacher who is clearly Jesus and not God. Last verse, let's see, kathegetes is used of a personal or private tutor. This is a special kind of teacher whose role is personalized and individualized for the particular student. We are probably not actually dealing with a titular use here. Okay, so here's the claim, Burra. It's not about the title here, but instead about the, and I'm reading ahead here in my mind, but I think what he's going to say, it's not about the title so much as it's about somebody trying to offload their spiritual growth, trying to offload their standing before God onto another, right? A lot of people seem to think that they're going to ride into heaven on the coattails of their pastor. You see what I mean? And that is absolutely not what the Bible teaches. Absolutely not. We are all going to answer for our own lives before God. And that's something that is very, very important. Let's see if that's the direction he's going here. We are probably not actually dealing with a titular use here, perhaps signaled by the move from the plural and the lack of definite article. A person would be a kathegetes for one or more individual students. What is rejected has some parallel in what Paul criticizes in 1 Corinthians 1:12. Each of you says, I belong to Paul, I belong to Apollos. This kind of focus and loyalty belongs only to Christ. So you see his argument here, Burra. He's saying it's not the fact that they're using a title, but it's the fact that somebody is trying to say, I identify my personal faith or belief with that person, rather than putting that only on Christ. So if somebody were to come along and say, I'm of Pastor Tanner, right? Or when I stand before God on Judgment Day and God asks me, hey, what do you have to say for yourself? Well, I followed what Pastor Tanner said, right? What this author is saying is that this is probably what Jesus has in mind when he's making these claims, do not be called father or pastor, etc. Okay? As in 11:12, the Christ. Here is the language of Matthew's Christian community, not that of the historical Jesus. Why does Matthew feel the need to add the Christ here, different from the pattern of the previous two cases addressed? Is it because of the possibility that the kind of unitary focus that Matthew is pointing to could attract itself to a Christian figure who is more foundational for the church than the local Christian community members? For example, a church founder or a recognized apostle or even a gospel writer, end quote. So, bottom line from this, and we've only referenced one exegetical commentary. We could go hours and hours on this topic, guys. It's been really good thus far. But it seems like there are ways of reading Matthew 23, 8-10 that aren't ruling out a rigid use of title, period, but instead are trying to get behind the spirit of what is being discussed here. One question I would have for you along these lines, Burra, is when Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. And if your hand causes you to sin, chop it off and cast it from you. It is better to enter into life maimed than to go to hell with your body complete. Would you say that Christ is being literal there? And I think that's a defensible position for what it's worth. Would you say he's being literal there? Or would you say that Jesus is using hyperbole to talk about the seriousness of sin? And if you say that Jesus is using hyperbole when he says to pluck out your eye or chop off your hand, I would suggest that perhaps Jesus is using a form of hyperbole here in verses 8-10 as well. Not that Jesus is so concerned about the use of the title across the board, but of what people often attach to the title or how rigidly some adhere to the title itself. So I'd be curious your thought on that, Burra, but that's the direction I'm leaning with my research thus far. Man, what a great discussion, guys. Really, really cool. Shay says, when I get to heaven, I'm going with a shirt that says, I'm with Tanner. Shay, you've missed the whole point, brother. You've missed the whole point, brother. Listen. Shay says, you could always pull a Jesus move. If someone calls you pastor, look to someone else and say, they call me pastor, but who do you say that I am? That's messed up. That's good. Line exchange, I think, referring to the exegesis here by Dr. Noland. I found it helpful. And Lion also says, yes, understanding the education landscape during the Gospels is important as well. Truth. Hashtag I'm with Tanner. You guys are missing the point. Come on. Dustbuster, if Jesus was being literal, we'd all be without eyes and hands. Oof. That's right. We'd have to all go without our limbs that cause us to stumble and fall into sin. Great study, guys. Look, this is a topic worth digging into in depth. We could see there's a lot of good commentary here, a lot of good verses that are relevant, and there's much more to be found here on this topic. Surely not to be dismissed. Benjamin, you aren't in sin. All right. And that's Benjamin's approach. I appreciate that. I would tend to agree with you. If I was actively in sin with this, or I thought I was, I would quickly repent. Okay, but there are definitely concerns here raised by Burra that are not to be dismissed or taken lightly. Great discussion, all. Great discussion. All right. New trending tag, Masterwood. I'm with Tanner. No, that's a bad tag. Bad tag. All right, let's continue here, guys. I want us to make sure we understand if this ancient nation is the Babylonians, okay? It looks like the Babylonians. One commentary said it's the Babylonians. Let's keep going. Pharaoh Necho II takes advantage of his victory over Judah. He immediately removed Jehoahaz, Josiah's successor, who was ruled for only 3 months. Let's continue, blah, blah, blah. We're looking for Babylon here. Only 5 years after the defeat at Haran in 610 BC, the Egyptians suffered a major loss. Oh, no, we already read this. Yes, we already read this. This is where we're trying to go. Judah's heart is desperately wicked, but 3:6 to 4:4 shows a path forward. Repentance will lead to a glorious new beginning, but how can a hard-hearted people ever repent? Only if God himself heals their faithlessness, as he promises to do when they are in exile. The sequences in 4:5 to 6:30 then depict the sorrows leading up to the exile, the complacent sinfulness prior to judgment, and the sudden terror of the enemy attacking. Okay, so the Lexham Context Commentary is too broad here. I'm not getting specific treatment of 5:15 like I want, so let's just move on. I thought it would be helpful because it says context in it, but it looks just like it's a little bit too broad. Let's dig into something that's likely to have a little more meat. And I think the Anchor Bible commentary might have a little more information here. Okay? A nation from afar, a nation whose language you do not know. The descriptions appear almost verbatim in the curse of Deuteronomy 28:49. The nation is Babylon. Jerome, Rashi, and Kimhi all state that it's Babylon. Boom. Though not explicitly mentioned in the book until 20:4-6 and not identified as the foe from the north until 25:9. Look at Anchor Yell, y'all. Not explicitly mentioned in the book until 20:4-6. Thus says the Lord, behold, I will make you a terror to yourself and to all your friends. They shall fall by the sword on their enemies while you look on, and I will give all Judah into the hand of the king of Babylon. He shall carry them captive to Babylon and shall strike them down with the sword. Shay, come on, bro. Shay says, I think it's actually America here. Oof. That's awesome. Okay, so we've got great discussion here. Here we've got an explicit reference. Is this going to come out in Hebrew? No. Okay, the Lord will bring a nation against you from afar away, from the end of the earth, swooping down like the eagle, a nation whose language you do not understand. The nation is Babylon. Jerome, Rashi, and Kimhi all state this. Not explicitly mentioned until Jeremiah 24:6, and not identified as the foe from the north until 25:9. Let's read that verse as well. Behold, I will send forth for all the tribes of the north, declares the Lord, and for Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. There you go, tying Babylon to the north. My servant, I will bring them against this land and its inhabitants, and against all these surrounding nations. I will devote them to destruction, make them a horror, a hissing, and an everlasting desolation. There you go. Benjamin, I'm back to live. Sorry, I had to bathe the kid. No problem, Benjamin. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. Shay says, Eagle, America, English, America, I rest my case. North America. North America. The tribe from the north. He's got it, guys. He's got it covered. Okay. Nation from afar, C4:16, 6:22, and Isaiah 5:26, where the reference is to Assyria. Okay, so part of the confusion probably for the member of my congregation is that it's talking about Babylon coming against Assyria, and that's what's challenging them, okay? Beholding, I am bringing against you a nation from afar, O house of Israel. It is an enduring nation, an ancient nation, a nation whose language you do not know, nor can understand what they say. Okay, this is helpful. House of Israel, vols and holiday delete, which is unnecessary. Its inclusion does not require an extra colon. Excluding Oracle of Yahweh, which can be extra metrical, counts out to 8 syllables, which is exactly the number. Nation well established from antiquity, eton, enduring or perennial, used elsewhere in the Old Testament with reference to rocks, mountains, pastures, rivers, and streams. Babylon is a well-established nation from antiquity, from at least the beginning of the 3rd millennium. a nation whose language you do not know. Calvin points out how an inability to understand the enemy would terrify a people and also lead to barbaric consequences. No pity, no alleviation of misery, no favor. Language conciliates people toward one another. Rashi's reference to the Tower of Babel may, according to McCain, have a connection with the communication problem envisioned here. And what it says you will not understand this may simply repeat the previous colon or add another more serious problem. It is one thing not to be able to speak the Babylonian language. It is even worse not to understand it. However, we must allow for hyperbole, as there is always some around who can understand or speak a foreign language. Okay, I think this is the answer, guys. We found the answer. It's Babylon. There's no reason, I think, to go further onto this topic. All right. Benjamin Allen, Tanner, what is the subscription that gets you 60K resources in Logos? I had to do it. What's up, Ikshudo? That's right, Master. That's right. Let's see. In a minute. I have 2 jobs now, so limited. Oof, that's tough. I feel for you. This may be a far stretch to what you're doing tonight, but do you have good resources that talk about limited atonement? Sorry, so very random. Yeah, it's a really difficult topic, Ikshudo. I would say if you're okay with a little more dated language, I think the most complete study is still John Owen's Death of Death in the Death of Christ. But the language is extremely difficult, okay? There's a little Puritan paperback. It's not even a Puritan paperback. There's Banner of Truth puts out a little document on it, and it looks like it's also in volume 10 of his collected works. Death of Death and the Death of Christ is, I still think, this is a display of Arminianism. Right here. The Death of Death in the Death of Christ by John Owen. I think this is still considered to be one of the top treatments of the topic of limited atonement. John Owens will have to look into. It's very difficult reading, okay? But one of the best arguments for limited atonement I've ever read comes from this volume. Here we go. Let me read you this. This comes from the same volume, okay? So it's tough, but if you can follow his logic, John Owen is never easy reading. But if you can follow his logic, John Owen's logic here, I think, is really strong for limited atonement, right? Benjamin, I liked the Mosaic of the Atonement book. Mosaic of the Atonement book. Okay, I haven't heard that one. So you can look into that one as well. Recommended from Benjamin Allen. Ikshudo is the Mosaic of the Atonement book. Listen to this. John Owen says this. I may add this dilemma to the Universalists. God imposed his wrath due unto, and Christ underwent the pains of hell for either all the sins of all men, or all of the sins of some men, or some sins of some men. Okay? Notice he creates 3 categories of people here. Okay? Either Jesus atones for all of the sins of all men, some of the sins of all men, or all of the sins of some men. Okay? So if we were to graph this out, let me bring up a Canvas document. So you've got sins and men. Okay? And then you have 3 ways of putting these together. You have all, or you have some. And between the 2 categories, you get 3 options. We can go all and all. We can go all and some. or we can go some and some. Okay? So Jesus either according to John Owen, died for all of the sins, for all men, all of the sins or of some men, or some of the sins of some men. Well, you could also do some of the sins of all men. Okay. I suspect the some category is one that nobody would affirm. Okay. But that's a hypothetical category that he doesn't consider here. All right. So these are your three categories that are relevant. All some, or some all. Following thus far? Let's work this out. If the last, that is, some of the sins of all men. If the last, some sins of all men, then have all men some sins to answer for, and so shall no man be saved. Okay, do you see his logic? His logic is, if Christ died for some of the sins of all men...
This is the biggest
come
room
on.
of
Lion
freaked out
Exchange, yes.
snowflakes you've ever seen in your life.
Lion Exchange cheered. X100.
Yes, let's go. Thank you so much, Lion Exchange. Appreciate that. So his first argument is, if Christ died for some of the sins of all men, then all men go to hell. Why? Because Jesus only died for some of their sins. So they still have some sins left over to account for, and because they have to account for some of those sins themselves, they go to hell. All right? And that's why he says, no man shall be saved. He continues, if God enter into judgment with us, though it were with all of mankind for one sin, even if Jesus paid for all of your sins but one, you still have a sin to account for, and so therefore you go to hell, according to him. Okay? Then have all men some sins to answer for, and so shall no man be saved. For if God enter into judgment with us, though it were all with all of mankind for one sin, no flesh would be justified in his sight. If the Lord should mark iniquities, who would stand? Psalm 133. We might all go to cast all that we have to the moles and to the bats and to the clefts of the rocks, tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of the Lord and the glory of his majesty. If the second, that is it which we affirm, that Christ in their stead and room suffered for all of the sins of all the elect of the world, i.e. all of the sins of some men. That's his stance right here. This is limited atonement, okay? This right here is limited atonement. Okay? Not saying he's right, but this is the argument he's making. All of the sins of some men, that's the limited atonement argument he's making right now. Okay? If the second, that is it which we affirm, that Christ in their stead and room suffered for all of the sins of all of the elect of the world. That's his point. Then they go to heaven. The elect go to heaven. Why? Because all of their sins have been paid for. See what I mean? You see what John Owen means? So this is his stance. It's the limited atonement stance. He continues. If the first, why then are not all freed from the punishment of their sins? Here's his point. He's saying you prove too much if you're at this stage. This proves universal atonement. Jesus died for all of the sins of all men. This is universal atonement. Okay? So he's saying you're proving too much. And therefore, universalism is true. He continues. You will say, he says, why are they not all freed from the punishment then? Did he not pay for all of their sins? You will say, because of their unbelief. They will not believe. So he's saying, okay, you're saying because of their unbelief, that's why they don't go to heaven. But he follows up, listen, but this unbelief, is it sin or is it not? And this gets to a critical question when it comes to limited atonement. Is unbelief sin or is it not sin? Is unbelief sin or is it not sin? And this is what all of this logic is leading up to. This unbelief, is it sin or not? If not, if it's not sin, why should they be punished for it? Okay, you're saying they can't go to heaven because of their unbelief, but if it's not a sin, why should they be punished for it? Jesus paid for all of their sins after all. If it be, then Christ underwent the punishment due it or not. If so, then why must that hinder them more than their other sins, for which he died, from partaking of the fruit of his death? If he did not, then did he not die for all of their sins? Let them choose which part they will. So here's his point. If the Arminian says unbelief is a sin, then Jesus did not die for all of the sins of believers. He died for every single sin except for the sin of unbelief, i.e., he died for some of the sins of all men, but John Owen's saying that should lead us to hell. If unbelief is a sin, then Jesus did not die for all of our sins. He died for all of them except for the sin of unbelief. If unbelief isn't a sin, then you prove too much and you fall into universalism. And Jesus died for all of the sins of all men, and their unbelief should not prevent them from going to heaven. Do you see the point? Do you see the argument? And arguments like this are part of why death of death in the death of Christ is considered the ultimate resource on limited atonement. Here's the thing I have for you, and here's why, Ixudo, I went into this. Can you understand that? Notice how it took us, 10, 15 minutes to break down half a paragraph? Oof. This is a really difficult work to read and work through. It's really, really challenging, okay? So this is considered one of the top works, even to this day, on limited atonement, but it is extremely challenging to navigate. And it's for that reason I would actually recommend generalized books on the 5 points themselves before I would recommend the death of death in the death of Christ. Don't get me wrong, this is a good work, but it's extremely difficult to work through. His logic is good, but it's so difficult to navigate. You see what I mean? That's the challenge. That's the challenge. So if I always enjoyed, I think it's just called 5 Points of Calvinism. And it's a little green book, and I may not even have it. Yeah, I don't think I have it in Logos. It's a green book I have in print. It's, just called like 5 Points of Calvinism or something like that. So generalized studies on Calvinism, I think, are really, really helpful. Ixudu says, I've heard misunderstandings of this as the sum is limited atonement. Also the question of, is faith a work or not? This is what I'm trying to understand. Yes, I know it's hard. I'm willing to go at it. I've been getting into the 5 points. Okay, well, there you go. If you're willing to go at it, I believe that the death of death in the death of Christ is considered one of the top works ever on limited atonement. So there you go. Yes, best of luck. Cal Magic, is this covered in any of the multi-view books series? I bet it is. Maybe not. Probably just tangentially because it's too big. You might have this one. 4 views on the nature of the atonement. Christus Victor, penal substitution, healing, kaleidoscopic. This is, I think, what Benjamin was referring to. So no, this isn't it. Theories of the atonement is not it. Perspectives on election, you might get some from that. Yeah. Eternal security, you might get some on that. I don't know. It might be too big a topic. Yeah, my pleasure, Ixudo. Very cool. Edgemark, I thought you were an Arminian. No, I am not. No, I'm not. What's up, Jonathan Sams? Good to see you. Here's the deal, Edgemark. Oh, there's a cap. I didn't see it. 5 views on the extent of the atonement. I saw that one. Oh, maybe not. Yes, it might be extent. Good call, Matthew. Dust. Nice. Here we go. Extent of the atonement, 5 views. Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Traditional Reformed, Wesleyan, Christian Universalist. This is probably the closest to the 5 Views books. Good question and great answer, Matthew USA. That's right. 5 Views on the Extent of the Atonement. This is probably the closest you're going to get. I didn't know Luth was Eastern Orthodox. Well, I guess I did. I've got several of his works in print. Hey, perfect, Matthew USA. There you go. Perspectives on the Extent of the Atonement, 3 views. Yep, and you can see definite atonement. That's limited atonement, just described. So that's going to be your Carl Trueman, general atonement, and then multiple intentions view of the atonement. These are tearing it up. Okay, so Ikshudo, if you want something a little more accessible that isn't such a deep dive into limited atonement itself, the nature of the atonement, no, not that one, sorry. 5 views on the extent of the atonement, and then perspectives on the extent of the atonement. So any of these works on extent of the atonement is going to give you some answers. The atonement, efficacy, and extent. Extent and efficacy. So these are all surrounding this topic. Yeah, great questions, guys. Great discussion. Really, really good. Yeah, no problem, Ikshudo. Best of luck. Jonathan Sams, I'm not sure if I said hello. Good to see you. Welcome. Shay says, have you ever read Humble Calvinism? I've heard that's good. No, I have not. Humble Calvinism. Here's the deal, guys. I've been a Calvinist for a long time, and I've defended that. If you look on my channel, there are several videos on Calvinism. I do not make a big deal about this topic in my current ministry. I feel like I'm called to other areas, and I feel like the Calvinism-Arminianism debate is a tired and stale debate that I'm not interested in engaging in. I have seen no reason to abandon my Calvinism, and so I will continue to hold to it, but I hold to it in a friendly manner. Probably the way that this book is referring to, right? Let's see, what was it? Humble Calvinism. I try to hold to it in that manner. And again, there are so many people who are engaged in that debate. There you go. Shay's got it, right? There's so many people engaged in that debate. I don't feel I'm called to that. I feel like I'm called to something different. And so I still hold to my stance on this issue, but you'll rarely see me bring it up. You know what is funny, though? I preached on election this last Sunday. I did bring up election because we were talking about the love of God. And the Bible teaches, I think, very clearly that election is an outworking of God's love. And so, yeah. Shay says, Calvinism rules, Arminianism rules. That's a quote from Augustine, by the way. Nice. Ikshudo says, that's a very respectful stance. Yeah, and I just try to, I hold to my position. I haven't seen a need to abandon it, but I can understand why people don't want to address it. I will say it has cost me. It has cost me collaborative opportunities on YouTube that I publicly hold to a Calvinist position. It has cost me opportunities, but I'm not going to abandon it because of that. And again, I've seen no reason to abandon it, but I also do not make it the primary aspect of my ministry. It is what it is. It's a divisive issue. It's an issue where tribalism is very easy to leak in. And I do not like tribalism within the church. What's up, Stannis? Peace be unto you as well. Good to see you. It's been a minute. So there you go. Dust, I like to say I'm trying to be as biblical as I can. Understood. Understood. Matthew USA, the canons of Dort are helpful if you want to learn about Calvinism. Yeah, that's a good approach. Dust says sad. Ikshudo says sad. Yeah, it is what it is. These things happen. Like I said, it's an easy issue to get tribalistic over, and but I'm not willing to publicly disavow my stance or anything like that. I believe that's what the Bible teaches, and so I adhere to it, but I do not make it a primary version of my ministry. Stannis, I still love Calvinist version of Pastor Tanner. Hey, much love to you, Stannis. Much love. That's awesome. Twitch theologians, some of us are neither a Calvinist nor Arminian. There are other options. This is coming from a Presbyterian. There you go. And Presbyterians are typically very reformed. Shay, what's your take on Leighton Flowers? Soteriology 101. I feel like he goes too hard against it. I mean, it's what he's built his entire online ministry around. What you win them with is what you win them to. So if you built your content, especially on YouTube, around anti-Calvinism rhetoric, you got to keep going with anti-Calvinism rhetoric. That's what he's built his whole ministry around. And so he has to. Watch, if he posts another video on his channel, it'll get a fraction of the views that his anti-Calvinism rhetoric gets. So he has to constantly be anti-Calvinistic if he wants to continue to build his following. It is what it is. What you win them with is what you win them to. That's also why my YouTube channel is focused on Logos content. Why? Because the same principle applies. If I post a video that's not Logos content, it gets a fraction of the views that my Logos content videos get. So what does that lean you in the direction of? It leans you in the direction of making Logos content. Okay? This is why we've built separate channels. I was giving the algorithm mixed messaging. I was telling the algorithm, hey, when I publish this video, my subscribers and viewers love it. And then when I publish this video, my subscribers and viewers don't click on it. And the first types of videos were Logos videos, and the second types of videos were Tanner's personal opinions on theology videos. And one of them was getting a lot of views, and one of them was not. And so here's what the YouTube algorithm simplistically thought. Oh, well, this content creator's content is inconsistent. Sometimes they put out good content. Sometimes they put out bad content. We don't know what to do with that except for, give them moderate growth. Or the answer is you could create a different channel on which you produce your theology content and you lean into the fact that your subscribers and viewer base loves your Logos content. And so that's what we've done. If you continue to throw mixed messaging at the algorithm, it's just going to assume you're an inconsistent content creator. The algorithm giveth and the algorithm taketh away. It is what it is. And so that's the deal, Shay, with Leighton Flowers' content. He has built his audience on the back of anti-Calvinism rhetoric. So he has to keep going down that road. Jonathan Sams, yes, Logos. And so you've seen it. The Pastor Tanner channel has become much more about Logos-specific content. If you want to hear my theological thoughts and ramblings, you can see the short videos we put out on the Pastor Tanner Ministries channel. Completely different channel with completely different content. Cal Magic, I love biblical theology. I'm beginning to think that systematic theologies can cause more harm than they intend to do due to some stands. I agree with that, Cal Magic. And that's why I lean into typology and biblical theology. I like having a good systematic foundation, but I prefer to build upon that. And I'm much more focused on biblical theology these days. I think it's more important. Stannis, sometimes theological talk makes me think I am witnessing the Tower of Babel with all the new languages. I can't understand what's being said. And yet there are some that love that. They love to get into the minutia and argue over definitions and things like that. I'm convinced that a lot of the problems we've had in the church since the Protestant Reformation, but even before that, are due to our excessive definizing. That's not a word, but that stuff that we do, right? So, yep, I agree, Stannis. Shay, all right, PT, need to put the kids to bed and teaching a small group tonight on Titus 2. Have a great night, man. Good stuff here. Thank you so much, Shay. God bless you. Have a good evening. And you're not missing anything. I'm going to take off soon here. I got a lot of stuff still to do this evening. Twitch Theologian Biblical Theology is part of systematic theology. They are two different approaches to theological study. I hear that. There are different ways of defining these things. I can see your point, Twitch Theologian. But the way Cal Magic is using the language, I prefer to lean into biblical theology these days. But I love systematics as well. Good night, Shay. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That sounded like some angry German speak. Definishizing. Yes. That's not what I meant, but yes. Stannis, have a good Christmas, PT. Just getting in there while we have some time. Amen. Amen. God bless you guys. All right, guys, I'm going to take off. Been going an hour and a half. Fun study tonight. We figured out our nation. Our nation is Babylon. I can answer the question of the member of my congregation, and we give them some background, some information on what's going on there, and help them connect the dots. So that's good. And we had some great conversation. Sorry to bring up the randomness. Wasn't random, Exudo. Great discussion. Great discussion. Nope, you didn't put me off at all. And I'm glad we talked about the title of pastor from Burra. That was great. And I'm glad we talked about limited atonement from Exudo. Good discussions, guys. Really appreciate it. All right, Line Exchange, thanks for the stream. Have a great week ahead. Yes, appreciate it. Have a great night, Pastor Tanner. You as well, Twitch Theologian. Appreciate you. Master, have a good evening. Yeah, take care, guys. You guys are fantastic. Blessed service on Stunning. Blessed Christmas. Yes, everyone, you guys are all amazing. Appreciate all the love and support. Thank you so much for participating in our channel. I'm loving the direction we're going. We plan to be doing this for a long time to come, Lord willing. You guys are fantastic. Have a great week, okay? Take care. God bless. Bye.